Ita Gadadhar, Srivastri Gaura Bhaktivinoda, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Prabhupada. Wow. So, welcome back. Has anyone reflected on their own fanaticism based on yesterday's class? Did anybody think about it? Because in the retreat we're going to do, I'm going to ask you to do this exercise to discover where you're fanatical in your own life. But I was just wondering if anyone had thought about it. Did any of you think about it, how you might be fanatical in certain areas of your life? Kind of blindly one-sided, only think one way. Any of you reflect on that? Yesterday? Would anyone like to reflect on it? Now? What way you might be fanatical? Which means extremely enthusiastic about something that may not be right, or something you don't understand, or something that you can't see any other side to except your own. In other words, by seeing your side, you would tend to minimize anything else. Well, let me give you an example. In must have been 1972, Sankirtan was done principally through Harinam, and devotees would distribute magazines or books next to the Harinam party. And that's only how, occasionally they would go door to door, but the main outreach was Harinam Sankirtan. Then you'd have a couple devotees distributing books next to the Harinam party. And then one devotee started distributing books on his own, and that meant he could go to different places. And he was having very good results. So more devotees started doing that. And then Prabhupada was emphasizing that. So he was really pushing book distribution. And the devotees thought that Prabhupada, in his pushing of book distribution, meant we should stop street chanting. So they asked Prabhupada, now you're emphasizing book distribution as the main way of Sankirtan. Should we stop the street chanting? And Prabhupada said, when I give you one instruction, it doesn't replace or negate another instruction. Does that make sense? In other words, so think in your life how maybe you have an understanding about something that might obviate a previous understanding, or might obviate an understanding that other people have. Thank you. And there were many cases in which Prabhupada would give two instructions, and the same situation, devotees would think, okay, does this new instruction supersede the old instruction? That could happen, but in most cases, he doesn't have you need a phone and headphones to hear. You don't have a phone? So, anyway, you figure it out.
Можно создать текст, а вы поближе, чтобы я мог перекладывать на основе этой рисунки. Поближе ножки пересесть сюда, чтобы я мог представить голос. Очень плохо слышно.
So there are many cases like that, where Prabhupada would give two instructions. He would give a second instruction to someone who already had one instruction, and then the person would think, oh, so I should stop doing what you told me to do before and do the new thing. And again, Prabhupada would say, well, if I give you a new instruction, it doesn't mean to stop the old instruction. So that's kind of how the mind of fanaticism works. It can't take both things. It can only take one thing. So if Prabhupada said book distribution is our most important program, in the mind of the fanatic it means Sankirtan should stop, and if you do Sankirtan and don't distribute books, something's wrong with you, you're a loser, you won't go back to Godhead, you're disobeying Prabhupada. That's the mind of a fanatic. Does that make sense? Prabhupada said book distribution is our most important program. Prabhupada said college preaching is our most important program. Prabhupada said Gurukul is our most important program. Prabhupada said scientific preaching is our most important program. Prabhupada said the Mayapur project is our most important program. Now, if you're a fanatic, you'll take one of those and think everything else is kind of Maya, except the program that you believe is the most important. Now, why did Prabhupada say they're the most important? There are a couple of reasons. On occasion, he would say it's the most important because he wanted to encourage the person who was doing that program, that this is most important. You're doing Gurukul or you're doing college preaching, so that's very encouraging if you're told by your spiritual master this is the most important program. Yes? But also, within a certain context, each of those programs are most important. Why is Gurukul most important? Because that raises the next generation who will be the future hope for ISKCON, who will be, in theory, the best devotees. Much better than anyone we could make will be the people that were born in our movement. So that has the potential to create a generation of pure devotees. Therefore, it's the most important. Prabhupada said, college preaching is the most important because from the colleges we will get our future generation of leaders. And then Prabhupada said, without leaders our movement will fail. So that's why college preaching is the most important, right? Scientific preaching is the most important because Prabhupada said the scientists are the greatest enemies of modern civilization. And they're putting everyone into darkness and spreading atheism around the world, so we have to defeat them. So it's the most important program. And book distribution. And we've heard many reasons why Prabhupada said, the more we distribute books, the more a movement becomes successful. So now you have four most importance. So if you have a fanatical tendency, wow, when Prabhupada says this is the most important, you can go crazy in fanaticism. Now, some fanaticism is good. If it's enthusiasm, which is based on a balanced understanding of why all these programs are important, and respect for those who are doing the other programs. Otherwise, we've seen in our early days of fanaticism that basically we thought anyone who didn't distribute books had some problem, like they couldn't understand something wrong with their brain, that this was the most important thing. Like, why would you do anything other than book distribution? Why would you be a head pujari? It didn't make sense to us. And Prabhupada's saying, book distribution is the most important. So that creates a kind of fanaticism. Although Prabhupada never denigrated anybody. who wasn't doing book distribution. Does that help you understand what fanaticism is? Fanaticism cannot understand things which it doesn't believe to be correct within its own context. It can't think out of its own context. And therefore, if Prabhupada says, this temple is the most important, the fanatic can't process that, and he translates that into, well, the temple is being built by book distribution. Without book distribution, there wouldn't be money to build a temple. Therefore, book distribution is the most important. And he has to translate it to make sense within his context. So sometimes you'll hear devotees say things that don't make sense because they have to make it make sense within their fanatical context. And so when Prabhupada says something different, they have to translate it into not what Prabhupada said, but to make sense in terms of their beliefs. Does that make sense? You understand? Maybe that will help you think in what areas you may be fanatical. Prabhu says, I don't think you should get married because it's pretty unlikely you'll go back to Godhead if you get married. Does that sound fanatical? Yes? No? You should remain brahmachari, brahmacharini. If you get married, definitely it's just because you want to have sex and basically something's wrong with you and you're kind of a loser and good luck, Prabhu. Does that sound fanatical? Yeah, so you can recognize fanatical statements because they state what is true, but they state it within a limited context. So it's not what a fanatical person is saying is not true. It's just not everything that's true. So it's an imbalanced statement which doesn't take into consideration other points of view on that particular topic. Srila Prabhupada gave the scientific preaching programs $10,000 every month. Did you know that? To pursue their preaching program, he gave them $10,000 every month. How many of you knew that? Raise your hand. That was BBT money given. It's pretty important, right? Prabhupada set up a production of dioramas. He wanted museums in every temple. And many, many devotees were working in that project. Those devotees could have been on the street distributing books. That was a very important project for Prabhupada. And that was a project Srila Bhaktisiddhanta did. And Prabhupada was copying that. So, one of the things that I've noticed when devotees make fanatical statements, another thing, this is not the only thing that happens, and it doesn't necessarily happen to everyone, but sometimes devotees make fanatical statements because they don't know everything about that topic. They've heard, you read something on the internet, you read 3 things, or you heard one lecture, and you make your conclusion. This is how it is. And unfortunately, sometimes the person who gave a lecture didn't have all the information. So now you're making a conclusion about something for which you don't have all the information, which becomes kind of embarrassing when you realize there's a lot more that you didn't know about it. And there's something I became aware of. And you may have heard Prabhupada said, don't change my books. You've heard that, right? You know the context of that? It was paintings, book size, and cover. That's what the context was. If you study everything he said, when he said, don't make any changes in my books, it was regarding those things. Then Prabhupada said, if there's one mistake, now this refers to text, if there's one mistake in my books, the whole book is rubbish. So that's quite a different statement. Like, okay, we found a mistake in Prabhupada's books. One devotee pointed out there's something like a statement in Prabhupada's books called Bandi Loka, something like that. Does anybody know that? Something, you know. So this Achyutananda, the Achyutananda said, have you ever heard about Bandi Loka? Something like that. And I said, no, what is it? He said, it's a mistake. It's in Bhagavad Gita. There is no Bandi Loka. And he told me what it was supposed to be, right? So Prabhupada's saying, if there's any mistake in my book, the whole book is rubbish. So I just heard that statement maybe a couple of months ago because I was studying, I was reading everything, every conversation that I could get my hands on about editing Prabhupada's books, which most of us would not do. But I was on a committee to review this topic, so I just read everything. And so then I learned that don't make any changes was in reference to paintings, cover, pictures, cover size, and so forth. But it wasn't, obviously you don't have unlimited right to make changes in editing, but if there are mistakes, they have to be corrected. So, and sometimes we might think, well, you know, to correct Prabhupada's books, that's really bad. Well, then you find out that they were corrected and corrected and corrected under his supervision because of the inefficiency of editors who didn't get it right. So they had to correct to get right what Prabhupada said. Or find out what he meant, because English was a second language, so the editors would, you know, is this what you mean? Like in the early days. There's a verse in Bhagavad Dham. It says, "Oh, the king." In other words, "Oh, the king." Not "Oh" is the king's name, but "Oh." So they had to ask, is "Oh" the king's name, or is it "Oh, the king"? You understand? "Oh, Prabhu." Is "Oh" his initiated name, or are you saying like, "Hey, Prabhu"? You understand? So just little things they would have to clarify, but sometimes they didn't clarify. And then it was caught later. The editor said, no, this is wrong. So, before you become a fanatic, make sure you know everything about what you're fanatical about. That's important, otherwise you may make come to a misinformed conclusion. This happened recently. We were taking part in another discussion. Should disciples of living gurus who are qualified to initiate be allowed to initiate? Because the etiquette is that you don't initiate in the presence of your spiritual master. And they asked many, many devotees, senior devotees, what do you think? Should it be allowed? Shouldn't it be? And you get various answers on different sides of the spectrum. But one devotee, he was very, very heavy. Very, very heavy. No way, this is really bad. I've been speaking out against this. And it was going on and on and on. But later we found that there were several devotees Prabhupada had asked to initiate in his presence. Did you know that? There, Prabhupada was not initiating and not performing any of the ceremony, and there were several devotees. Prabhupada said, "Are you ready to initiate now?" And they were bringing disciples to Prabhupada. Please initiate them. And Prabhupada said, "No, you initiate them. Are you ready?" So that information that devotee didn't have, because the general thing that Prabhupada said is, do not initiate in the presence of your guru. And then we found out Prabhupada had asked some devotees. At least this is what the devotees say, that they asked him. So that's interesting information, isn't it? Which would change your opinion. Although maybe it's an etiquette which we follow, but if your guru says do it, then you do it. Then you can do it. You don't do it. Prabhupada said, you become guru when I ask you. When I tell you, you become guru, now you become guru. So the general etiquette is, you would on your own not become guru, not in the presence of your guru. After your guru departs, you can become guru. But if your guru asks you to initiate, That's a consideration. It may be allowed. So this devotee was very animate. No, no, no. Prabhupada said no, no, no. But he didn't understand. There were a few times when Prabhupada said you could do it. I'm not sure he understood it was an etiquette. I think he understood it as a principle that couldn't be violated. But Prabhupada said it was an etiquette. So you see how we can become, if we don't have enough information, we can become fanatical. So before you become a fanatic, get your information straight. Is that okay? Yes? No? Maybe? So raise your hand if you're a fanatic. We had a godbrother once. He was walking in the temple and a woman was coming out. So he was so afraid he ran to the window and went in the temple through the window. Because as everyone knows, women are the personification of Maya, so you should stay far away from them. Yes? Yes? We had talked about that yesterday. Now, let's say I'm a strict devotee. Every day of my life, I'm up by 4, I'm at Mangal Arati, I chant 16 rounds. Someone may call me a fanatic, right? Yes? You know devotees like that? You don't need a watch. You just follow them around, you know what time it is. They're very regular. You know devotees like that? You just every day, They walk in the temple, it's the same time every day. They walk out of the temple, it's the same time every day. They come back for class or group at the same time every day. So some devotees might call them fanatic. He's a fanatic, look at him, but that's what Prabhupada wanted. But that is not fanatic unless that devotee thinks that everyone who's not like him has problems. There's something wrong with him and they're spiritually bankrupt or they don't understand Prabhupada's philosophy or they're not serious. Then you might say he's fanatic. But he's not a fanatic because he's serious himself. He goes on book distribution every day. He's not a fanatic. He's a fanatic if he says everyone who doesn't do book distribution is in Maya. Then he's a fanatic. So fanaticism, it's not fanaticism. That's not fanaticism. It's enthusiasm and it's focus. And it's dedication. But sometimes we'll translate that as fanaticism. But it isn't. It only becomes fanaticism if the person's out of balance and thinks everyone who doesn't do what he's doing exactly the way he does it, there's something wrong with him. Does that make sense? Yes? So don't call a strict devotee a fanatic. Just because he's strict. We have a problem because we have a very strict philosophy and we have to preach it. But we have to be accommodating to those who can't follow it 100%. Right? And so we have to make adjustments. Right? Some people have to get married. Not everyone can do book distribution. So it's fanaticism. Say, no, nobody should get married. Everyone should do book distribution. So you make adjustments. That you can be brahmachari, do book distribution your whole life. It's not you're a fanatic until you think that nobody can be Krishna conscious unless they do that. Right? So when we preach, when we explain Krishna consciousness, we have the challenge to be able to speak the principles. These are the principles. You should be up. Prabhupada said, if you're not up at 4 o'clock, you're not serious. That's pretty heavy. Isn't it? But what are you going to do? He said it. And so we have to repeat it. Right? We understand some people have jobs, some people don't have fantastic bodies. Some people work late at night, there may be adjustments, but that's a general principle which we strive to follow. That's what Prabhupada taught us. Right? So to not be fanatical, we have to be able to deliver that principle, share it, and at the same time understand people's capabilities or handicaps in following those principles, but still encourage it at the same time. And like we said yesterday, how Prabhupada had this sannyasi, he wasn't chanting his rounds. And they even asked Prabhupada, can you tell him? And he said, no, you tell him. Because Prabhupada didn't want to tell him to do something he wasn't going to do. But he was doing a lot of service, so Prabhupada was okay. He was okay. He chanted 8 rounds a day. He's okay, he's doing service. So Prabhupada would make adjustments as needed. Sannyasis, okay, get married, come back, take on your service again. He would make these adjustments. But at the same time, he would always preach the principles. So in his personal life, he was the perfect example. He would preach purity, and then he would adjust according to individuals. But it wasn't an adjustment for the whole movement. Like if you say I can't get up at 4, I say, can you get up at 5? You say, yeah. Okay, that's fine. I'll say, okay, for you can do that. But it's not that I give a class and say, okay, everybody get up at 5. I have to say what Prabhupada said. And then individually we may discuss, okay, is that possible? How to deal with it. Does that make sense? So that's the way Prabhupada dealt with it. So there's a balance there. You don't want to water it down, but at the same time you don't want to discourage everyone. Like I bet some of you got discouraged, right? 4 o'clock, you're not up, you're not serious. How many of you got discouraged? Raise your hand. Come on, be honest. How many of you got discouraged when I said 4 o'clock? If you don't get up at 4, you're not serious. Or felt bad? Raise your hand. Felt guilty? Yeah, okay. See, but still we have to say it. But if I don't see you at 4 o'clock every morning, I don't become critical of you. I don't think you're not a devotee. I don't think I'm the only devotee. I don't think you're not serious. That's for you. That statement for Prabhupada is for you. It's not for me to judge you. That's for you to judge yourself. And so you will find that the pure devotee is very strict, but he's not judging other people by his own standard. Right? So that's where the fanaticism comes in. Oh, I do it and you don't, so I'm now judging you by my standard. But my standard is Prabhupada's standard, so therefore I think I can judge you. You won't see advanced devotees doing that. Now, if I tell you should get up at 4 o'clock, I'm not judging you. I'm just repeating what Prabhupada said and telling you what I think would be best for you. But I'm not judging you, and I'm trying to encourage you. We go on a morning walk every morning. And some of you go with us. And just to make you feel bad, those of you who didn't go with us today, we went to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house. And just to make you feel really bad, we helped raise funds for Bhaktivinoda Thakur's to paint that temple. And if you go in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's room and you stay more than a minute, they'll ask you to leave. But I don't like following rules, so I just went in there and sat down. Started chanting japa, because they used to let you do that. And what place to chant japa? It was like, there's the japa guru, what better place? But because we gave the money, they let us stay there and chant as long as we wanted. So I was having like an amazing japa session. And they didn't kick us out because we helped that temple so much. So all of you who didn't come, you missed out. So that's a polite way of saying you should get up early. And I think those of you who didn't come, who normally come, probably didn't get up. So that's a polite. So so we can make the point in other ways, right? Some preachers make the point by sharing their realizations about what they do early in the morning, or their realizations of japa when they chant early in the morning. And so that way they try to inspire you. Right? So they're not fanatical. They're fanatical for their own sadhana, but they're not judgmental of you, but they would like you to do it. And they have to share what Prabhupada taught. So there's a balance. Right? Yes? Because if we don't share the strict principles, then we do you an injustice. If we shame you and make you feel guilty for not following, we also do you an injustice because you become discouraged. Yes? Does that make sense? So that's the balanced nature of people who are not fanatics. They can be very focused themselves, but they leave room within their consciousness for other people's devotion and how that devotion manifests on different levels. And then they try to encourage them. They don't make them feel bad because they failed, but they try to encourage them. Oh, Prabhus, you should have come this morning. It was amazing. And you know what? Every day we go on a walk. And one of these days we're going to go back, but I just don't know what day it is. So if you come every morning, then one of those days you'll get to come. And if you come with us, you get to stay in the room. And today we cleaned that whole room. That was amazing. They'll let us do whatever we want there. Right? Pretty much, yeah.
They feed us all day.
Oh yeah, and then on the 10th we can go for prasadam. Yeah, yesterday I said something. I don't know if you heard it or paid attention, but it was very important. I said that even if you don't agree with somebody, you should try to understand them. Because what you will find as you grow, you change. You mature. And you might agree 10 years from now with the thing you disagree with now. And if you want to do an experiment, go up to any Prabhupada disciple and say, what were you like when you were 25? Just see what they say. I said, do you believe exactly today the things you believed then? Do you think like you thought then? Do you have the same vision of Krishna? Obviously, you know what they're going to say. You're going to say, I was such a fanatic, I was so narrow-minded, I didn't understand A, B, and C. So, it's interesting because often what you're convinced of today, 20 years from now, you won't be convinced of. So just keep that in mind, that you will grow, you will expand, you will understand. You will begin to appreciate things that maybe now you don't appreciate. So leave that part of your mind open. Even if you don't understand it now, leave your mind open to at least try to understand other people, other points of view. Prabhupada was very big. He fit everyone. He fit everyone into Krishna consciousness. One time Prabhupada said, it's not even so important what you're doing, but what's important is to be doing something, is to be engaged in doing something that you're enthused to do. That was a very important principle for Prabhupada. And in fact, he said something amazing. This is a little difficult to understand. Prabhupada came to India and he had 3 projects, which is the Bombay Temple in Juhu, the Vrindavan Temple, and the Mayapur Temple. Those were the first 3 projects that he focused on. I mean, he opened small temples, Calcutta, here and there, but those were the main 3. And then one time he said, actually, we don't even need these projects, but I have so many big men that need engagement, so I started these projects to engage them. Isn't that interesting? It's like, we could sit down and chant Hare Krishna. I think one time he said we don't need these grotesque projects. You know, grotesque, big. Because look at his spiritual master. His spiritual master said, it would have been better we didn't open the big temples because it caused problems. So Prabhupada's principle was somehow or other be engaged, doing something that you enjoy, that inspires you. Just be engaged. whatever it is. And Prabhupada was happy that we were engaged. And it was rare that Prabhupada ever said, why are you doing that service? That would only happen if somebody was engaged under Prabhupada's direct instruction to do something and they were doing something else. He would say, why are you doing that service? Because he gave them a direct instruction. But for the general devotees, why are you doing this service? No, it's not like that. It was always, I'm very happy with the service. Someone's preaching in the colleges, doing book distribution, managing a temple, street chanting, whatever. They would report to Prabhupada, this is the result. Oh, I'm very happy. Continue. I mean, go through his letters and show me the letter where Prabhupada said, why are you doing that service? If you find that letter, it's probably to Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Because he was doing a service, Prabhupada wanted to do another service. But when he showed Prabhupada the results of that service, and Prabhupada said, okay, continue doing it. So Prabhupada was very flexible, pliable. Yes. So, as I said yesterday, when you read Prabhupada's instructions without understanding how Prabhupada applied them, sometimes you can misunderstand those instructions, and that could make you narrow-minded. So, it's very important to read the Lilamrita and read the biographies of Srila Prabhupada to understand his context. As I said yesterday, the women who were with Prabhupada said, we never felt like women. We were never made to feel that we were any different. We were accepted. So that's an important instruction. Prabhupada made everybody feel accepted. He never made anyone feel handicapped. And so neither should we ever make devotees feel like that. Even if we think what they're doing is wrong, Prabhupada's instruction is, you show the right example. Prabhupada, why is so-and-so doing that? It's not right. You show the example, you do what's right. And they'll become inspired by your example. Does that make sense? Yes? So now I'm going to ask you the question again. Have any of you realized what you're fanatical about? Anybody would like to confess? The conclusion is, the fanatics don't come to my classes. Definitely to the conclusion. Do you have one? No.
Share something.
Yes, please.
It was like just now recently in Mayapur. I'm doing Bhakti Shastra, so I have to follow sadhana very strictly. I have to do Kakavali,
Yes.
Bhagavatam class, and everything. Usually when I stay in temple, I always do it, so it's not a big deal for me. I'm trained like this, like I'm already used to it. So at this time I got a roommate, and she didn't do this at all.
So you're going crazy.
Well,
I have to repeat for them. She's strict in her sadhana, but her roommate isn't. And now she's going to tell us how she reacted. And your reaction?
I was critical towards her. I was like thinking like, it's not supposed to be like this. If you are in town, you're supposed to get closer.
Okay, so this is a good point.
And then she pointed it out. She said, why are you so arrogant? Like you think you're doing this means you're special or something? You're just receiving verses, so you just be grateful for this. You cannot join it. This is my practice, this is my personal thing. It's very mature actually, you know. Just say like this. And then I was reflecting on it, and I realized that she's actually lying. Everything that I can do is just continue what I'm doing. And if she sees that I'm thinking time that it's good, and I just can laugh and So
she said her roommate saw that she was Did you say anything, or she just saw that you were, she felt her attitude was felt? Yes? What? Oh! The roommate is here. She said the roommate's here. The roommate stood up in the back. Okay. This is really good. I'm glad you brought this up. This is very important. Our relationship with Krishna can easily get derailed by another person's behavior, which we judge as wrong or bad or horrible or offensive or whatever. Yes? And so I think we should take situations like this as Maya throwing bait at us. Come here. Look at that devotee. Look what they're doing, or look what they're not doing. Here's some bait. Catch on to that bait. And then you catch on to the bait, and then what happens? Start going down. The more you think about it, right? Now, yesterday we told a story. Oh, I don't know if I told the story. No. I don't know if I told the story. Did I? So, this sannyasi was, I told the story. He was complaining to Prabhupada about all the grihastas that weren't going to Mangal Artik that live across the street from the temple. It's a phenomena in today's ISKCON. There are many temples that have houses around the area or apartments where devotees live or are owned by the temple. Very close. And many of the people that live there don't attend the temple for some reason. I mean, they have the homes close so they could attend, but they don't. So this was the situation, and this one sannyasi was complaining to Prabhupada, as I said yesterday, that there's so many grihastas are living near the temple, but they're not going to the temple. So what did Prabhupada say? Who remembers? I told this yesterday?
Yeah.
And what did Prabhupada say?
Dear sannyasi, stop thinking about the grihastas.
Yeah. Dear sannyasi, don't think about the grihastas. So I think it's the same principle. In other words, I have my bhakti, I have my devotion. If someone is not doing something which I think they should be doing, and I dwell on that, then that person's fault becomes my fault. And I think I mentioned this on one of the daily Facebook quotes. When you criticize another, you punish yourself for another person's fault. When you criticize another person, you punish yourself for their fault. So it sounds like what happened to you. Yeah? You were punishing yourself. You were getting disturbed, so you were punishing yourself. So I think we should see this as Maya baiting us. Because none of us are perfect. And we're inviting imperfect people to come and practice pure devotional service, and people will find their place according to their commitment, right? And maybe when you go back to where you live, you'll have a different schedule, which might be her schedule, you know? So that makes it even more ridiculous, because you're upset about her schedule, which might be the same schedule you have otherwise. So just be aware that this is an excellent way that Maya will bait you. And then she'll get your mind attached, and then you'll focus on the fault of another, and then you'll punish yourself. And it is connected to a kind of fanaticism. It's like, okay, that's what she's doing, that works for her. This is what you're doing, it works for you. You wish every devotee in Mayapur would be in the temple by 4 a.m. every morning chanting the runs. Wow, at 2 o'clock it'd even be better, right? But that's not a reality, and, you know, you'd actually think if someone's living in Mayapur, it's just, why wouldn't they be at Mangalarti? It's like, I mean, it's more understandable if you're living in the West and you have a job, but you're living here. But we don't want to go there because it's just, right? You understand? You agree?
That helped me to see actually she helped me to see how actually proud I am. My emotional self speaking just
Okay, another good point. She said she helped her see that she was proud. Okay, so what do you have to understand about pride? Is that pride, it's always there. It just needs a catalyst to manifest. So if you're getting up at 6 o'clock, you have nothing to be proud of. If you get up at 4 and you're at Mangalartik every day, now you have something to be proud of. So the pride's always there, waiting for something to be proud of. So Krishna was just showing you. So that's a good lesson, right? Yeah. And then it counteracts the benefit of the sadhana. If anything you do well in Krishna consciousness, if you become proud of it, it counteracts the benefit of it. I fasted today, I chanted 64 rounds, and I'm out telling everybody, well, you won't believe what I did today. But really, what I'm trying to do is, as we say in America, toot our own horn. This is what I did today, everyone. I chanted 64 rounds. I got up at this time. Right? And so, Shastra says, don't tell how many rounds you chanted. Don't tell all the tapasyas you've done. Because then it ruins it. And it eventually becomes the cause of the very activity to purify you becomes the cause of your pride.
So we stop to write our sadhana report?
That's different. Because you're not broadcasting it to the world.
But Prabhu, sometimes if you're doing any services, a group of, let's say I'll give my example, we are trying to build something in Halifax, Canada. It's been 9 years now. We have been looking for something and now it's gradually building up. So sometimes sharing your services helps the other devotees.
Yeah, so it all depends on why. So he's saying, we've done something, we want to share it. Why? Like if I say, Prabhus, Matajis, ladies and gentlemen, mamas and papas, I chanted 64 rounds, it was so amazing, you should do it, I'm going to do it tomorrow, you want to come with me? That's a little different, right, than going up to everyone saying, I just chanted 64 rounds, because there's some ego there. So if there's no ego there, there's no problem. Like, I was talking a few days ago, or maybe even yesterday, about not judging devotees. Right? And so one devotee wrote me and said, but, we have people coming to our temple and they just disturb. And so we have to make judgments. And I said, yes, but what I was talking about, judgments made out of prejudice. Judgments made out of pride. That's a whole different thing. When I say don't make judgment, oh, I'm making no judgment. There's no door in there. I'm just going to walk through the wall. No. You have to make judgments all the time, of course. But what it means is not to be motivated by bodily conception, judging according to caste, birth, body, and so on. This is all in the scripture as Vaishnava Aparad. So that's what it means. If the intention is pure, that's a different thing. Right? Thank you for that. That was super. Fantastic. And how do you feel now after you've, what's the word? Confessed. How do you feel now? Better? You feel better now that you...
I mean, our relationship became better.
Uh-huh. Yeah, good. Okay, this is a fantastic point. I'm going to run with this because if you get married or if you are married, if you will get married or thinking to get married, this is really important because your partner may not have the same spiritual standards that you have. And so it can become very easy to judge them by your standards. And certainly, if you have high standards, you would like your partner to have high standards, but they may not. And you're going to have to understand them. That this is where they're at and they're doing their best. And otherwise, you go crazy in the relationship. Right? Who has experience of going crazy in a relationship? Trying to get other person's standards to yours? As a word of advice, the man should always be more Krishna conscious than the woman. That's the general principle. If the man is less Krishna conscious, the woman will try to spend her whole life getting him to be more Krishna conscious. And if the man's more Krishna conscious than the woman, it's not such a big problem. If the woman's more Krishna conscious, and the man becomes a much bigger problem for her than it does for a man whose wife is not as Krishna conscious as him. It's a more natural relationship. And in fact, the Shastra says, I think it's, anyway, it's going to come up on one of my daily quotes, that a man should not marry, if a man's going to marry and he sees the qualities of the woman, he has to have those qualities or he shouldn't marry her. If she has better qualities than him, he shouldn't marry her. And a lot of men like to marry women who are more Krishna conscious than they are. And Shastra says it doesn't work that way. And the women get frustrated eventually because they expect him to be the leader. Women, you agree? I don't know. But it's, of course, men want their wives to be Krishna conscious, but it's just the male psychology is more independent, so even if she isn't, he's okay. But the woman, she needs it more. And it's according to Shastra, a Brahmin woman should not marry a Kshatriya man. A Kshatriya woman can marry a Brahmin man, or she can marry, a man can marry lower, but a woman cannot marry higher. It doesn't work. No. A woman can't marry lower. It doesn't work. Yes?
How do we judge that the other person is more or less Krishna conscious than us? Because sometimes we see that emotion may follow all the rules and regulations, but be less Krishna conscious than the one who's like getting up later.
Yeah.
But he's remembering Krishna more.
How do you know how? You can buy my Krishna conscious meter. You put it over their heart and it registers. It resolves all your problems. Or you could come up with your checklist, like a 24-point list, air pressure, oil levels, transmission fluid. Yeah. Prabhu, how's your transmission fluid? So you just have to replace it with what do you think about getting up early in the morning? And what do you think about reading? And what do you think about the temple? And what do you think about all these things? You start to understand. The problem is, you may go into the marriage where he's more advanced, and 10 years later you may be more advanced. You can't control it. But whatever the case is, you do your best to see if it's compatible, and then once you get married, that's it. You want some good advice? Be happy in Krishna consciousness. That way, if your marriage isn't good, you'll still be happy. Because your happiness will come from tasting the nectar of Krishna consciousness and serving. I think a lot of grihastas don't understand. If they can just be married for 25 or 30 years, even if it's not super fantastic, but just do that, that'll help them tremendously. Even if it's not a match made in heaven, as long as it's not a match made in hell, as long as it's, it's okay, that'll help you tremendously. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be all rosy. It's nice if it's good. I'm not saying it shouldn't be. I'm not saying pick a man who you're not compatible with, so you won't get attached. That doesn't make sense. But being firm in Krishna consciousness is really important. And that's where you'll find your real happiness. Your ultimate happiness. And then if you can make it work in marriage, that you'll find you'll materially be grounded, even if it's not the best. And you know why you get married? Did anyone ever tell you? To become Krishna conscious. That's why. And the idea that you get married to enjoy sense gratification? No, that's not why. And if that's why you're getting married, all I can say is good luck. And don't invite me to that wedding, because it's not going to work. That's in Prabhupada's books. Marriage is not for sense gratification. It's for Krishna consciousness. In the purport, write those exact words. And when you enter that way, that helps you choose. Will I be Krishna? If I marry this man or woman, will I be Krishna conscious? Will this make me Krishna conscious? That's the question. Not will this make me happy. Of course, you might say, but I need to be happy to be Krishna conscious. Okay, but that's supporting the reality, will this make me Krishna conscious? Now, some devotees will find the perfect partner who will make them Krishna conscious, but that partner won't give them sense gratification. And they'll refuse, saying, oh, I want to get sense gratification. That's not smart. But it may have to be done for some people, because they're not evolved yet. But if you make a decision based on what will make you Krishna conscious, that's perfect. Right? Okay, I would like to guarantee all of you that if you're married, well, you already know this, but if you do get married, your wife or husband will do things you don't like. I will guarantee you. I hope they don't do it 5 times a day, but they will do it. The less they do it, the better, but they will definitely do it. So just get used to it. Yes?
I was thinking, isn't all religions a little bit fanatical?
Aren't all religions a little bit fanatical?
And what about that verse, abandon all religions and seek surrender?
And what about the verse, abandon all religions and surrender to me? If a religion is not based on deep understanding of the science of God, then it has to be fanatical. Okay, let's look at something fanatical. This is an interesting example of fanaticism. You belong to a church. Let's say the Mormon church. Now, if you're a Baptist, you believe the Mormons are not Christians. Did you know that? Yeah. And you believe the Mormons are going to hell. And what do you do in hell? You know what you do in hell? Yes. You burn. But you don't burn up, you just burn. And you burn forever. Now, where do you think that idea came from? Oh, God loves you, but you happen to walk in the door of the wrong church because your parents were Mormon. If your parents are Mormons, a good chance you'll be a Mormon. But now you're going to hell, and in hell you burn forever. Okay, so let's say you're a mother, and your kid, when coming home, got lost and knocked on the door of your neighbors instead of your house and walked in. And now you decided to build a fire in the backyard to burn them. And your known in the neighborhood as the most loving mother that ever existed. There's something wrong with that picture? And that everyone in the world who doesn't walk in the door of our church is going to burn in hell forever. Is that weird? Okay, now, if you burnt your kid in the backyard of your house, what would happen to you? You'd be in jail. And you would also be considered crazy, right? So to say God would burn someone in hell forever means God's crazy. God is crazy. And God will do things that even we wouldn't do. And God is love. He would do an evil thing, but He's love. Is that fanaticism? Yeah. So the answer is yes. If you don't have a philosophy which is grounded in a deep understanding of spiritual science, you'll get fanaticism. But I will quote you. This is a quote from Krishnakanta Samhita. There are a lot of fanatics in the Hare Krishna movement. And so the answer is yes, religion does foster or can foster fanatical spirit. Prabhupada said this, you're not doing this, how could you? You're a disgrace to Prabhupada. We're dealing with absolutes. Krishna wants you to do this, how can you say that? So we have to be careful, because we can be very prone to be fanatical. Yes? You agree? Raise your hand if you agree. Okay. Raise your hand if you don't agree. Raise your hand if you don't know. Okay. We've all seen someone, or more than someone, who is fanatical, who says something that's very one-sided. We've seen them in ISKCON, we've seen them outside ISKCON. It's human nature. But they do tend to frequent religious organizations. They also frequent political organizations. Ideologies, even atheism can be communism is atheist. And the communists were also killing. So it's not just religious people kill, but they're more famous for it. So the answer is yes, and the answer is we have to be careful. Okay, who has a question? Or an argument?
I have a question.
Okay.
Is fanaticism, could it be caused by insecurity or some fear? Because it seems like they want to hold on to something. So, could it be caused by, there could be many causes, but if
Fanaticism caused by?
Insecurity or some fear, like, if I allow this person to do this, then I would also fall down.
Yeah, but that's not fanaticism. That would be, she's asking, what if I don't want to associate with somebody because I feel that they'll hurt my bhakti? Well, that's protecting yourself. So, sometimes, so the answer is, sometimes you have to protect yourself. So you might have to be a little fanatical in an immature stage, but at least if you know you're fanatical, it's okay. You say, I'm a little fanatical because I'm weak, and I need to protect myself from this person that's a very bad influence on me. In a more mature stage, you could probably deal with that person, but you're doing what you need to do to protect yourself. And you understand it's your own defect, right? So then it's different. That's not really fanaticism. It's just being intelligent. Yes?
I have an example of fanaticism coming from insecurity.
Okay.
devotee is not as strong in Krishna consciousness.
Say that, what was the first thing you said?
If a devotee is not that strong in Krishna consciousness, and he knows he has flaws and in his sadhana or something, and then there's this insecurity or fear that he will be judged by others who are more strict. So
then you become strict.
It's possible that you will become kind of a fanatic about the fanaticism, you know? And you kind of...
To protect your ego, to protect your image. Yeah, oh, okay, yeah, that's a good one. So she's saying, if I'm very concerned about my image, then I'll want to act in a way that people will appreciate me. So I end up becoming kind of a fanatic in that sense. Fanatically following to protect my image.
Or you start criticizing the ones who are, like you said, the ones who are following strictly, you start criticizing them as fanatics. Because you are insecure in your...
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. Criticizing others who are fanatics. Criticizing others as fanatics. To what? Protect your image. Yeah. Okay, I had a conversation today with one sannyasi. So we came up with a new plan for ISKCON. There's going to be ISKCON West. There's going to be Hare Krishna West, Hare Krishna Midwest. There's going to be Hare Krishna Middle East, Hare Krishna East, Hare Krishna North, Hare Krishna South, Hare Krishna Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest. So why was he presenting that? Because he was saying that because we're individuals, we have different ways of understanding and applying Krishna consciousness according to our nature and our intentions in service. And differing views may be valid or are valid within the context they're being applied. Like America is much different than Eastern Europe. And sometimes I hear what devotees are preaching or teaching in Eastern Europe, and I know what devotees are preaching in America. And if you just switched it, it wouldn't work. That you get kicked out of either place. It's just not appropriate. It's a different culture, different values, different traditions. So this sannyasi was saying we need to make room for these different viewpoints and have space within ISKCON. Otherwise, we fight over who's right when they're both right or they both have places. So in order to avoid schisms, why don't we just make room for everybody? So you say, well, what's your view on this? Oh, my view on this is Krishna Midwest. I'm Midwest on that one. Oh, what about this topic? Oh, on that one, I'm definitely Middle East. You know. So it's like, and it's all fine because there's a place for it within ISKCON. It's been accepted as valid, you know? Because sometimes devotees will debate something and they're both right. They're both valid points. They just need an environment to apply. And those ideologies applied in the wrong environment won't work. So we can just accept, okay. You know, like if you're not married, there's a certain etiquette and behavior you have to follow. And if you're married, then it changes. So what's inappropriate for a single person may not be inappropriate for a married person, and vice versa. So this is kind of a similar idea. And the reason he came up with this idea is because we're in a group and we've been debating a certain topic, and there wasn't any kind of progress in debating the topic because differing views who are presenting points within a specific context. And each party kind of feeling that their context should pervade the entire movement when it doesn't have to. It can have a context within a particular environment. Or there can be a context in a specific situation. Is that clear? Anyway, it's an idea based on a reality that exists within human nature. And also within the broadness of Krishna consciousness. Like college preaching is the most important, so is science, so is book distribution, so is Gurukula. So is preaching on buses. Turning buses into temples and preaching, most important. Dramas are better than books. Prabhupada said, dramas are better than books. Go form drama troops and do plays on the street. It's better than books. Devotees actually used to do that. They'd do Harinam, they'd get a crowd, and they'd do a drama. I'm drowning, save me. And they'd pull their shirt off and run away with the shirt. And the person would die, and then the devotee would talk to the audience and explain. So, Prabhupada paid money to fly 5, 6, 7 actors from America to India to perform in India. Did you know that? Called the Vaikuntha Players. He paid to fly them. He felt it was so important. So it's such a big movement. There's so much room for all of us. Cow protection. How important is cow protection? It's essentially important, right? Prabhupada said, every problem in human society today is because the cows aren't being protected. How important is that? You should all immediately figure out how to get enough money to buy as many cows as you can, buy as much land as you can, and protect cows. Forget book distribution. That was time and place situation. This is the future. The world's going to hell. The economy's going to crash. There's going to be no money, no food. We have to save the cows. Now, if I preach that in class, you might think, what's going on here? But it's true. And there's a place for that. There's a place for devotees who want to buy land and save cows. Why would we stop that? That's Krishna Midwest, because the Midwest of America is a good place for cows. It's a lot of land there, right? You understand what I'm saying? Now, Prabhupada gave us so much, and to think, this is the most important thing, and, we're not protecting cows, and this is so bad, devotees are pushing book distribution, they're neglecting, people will preach that. Why do we have to preach that? Because they're not mutually exclusive. One doesn't override the other. They both can go on. So that was his idea. I like that idea personally. I think it's the solution. And we'll have a bigger movement, more inclusive. Okay, I've said enough. Now it's time for questions. Or did I already ask for questions? I did? Yeah, okay. Now it's the second round of questions. I didn't even get to today's topic because I thought yesterday's topic was so important that we needed to talk more about it. Okay. Yes?
Yesterday you mentioned the principle of to become balanced, you should learn to
hear the other side of the...
Listen to people who you disagree with.
Yeah, yeah.
Can that not be dangerous if you yourself may not be so grounded in what you believe in? So say you're new to Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
And then someone comes up, say Mayapur Dham.
Yeah, okay.
So in that sense, can it not be dangerous?
So he's asking, wouldn't it be dangerous to listen like a Mayavadi? Yeah, it would be. When I was saying that, I was thinking in the context of our own scripture, our own shastra, like you've got an understanding, you've come to an understanding, you've been taught to understand things in a certain way, and your experience supports that understanding, and someone has a completely different understanding, or a slightly different understanding, which is still based in Prabhupada's books. So what you say could be a problem in an immature state, because you might get very confused. But if you have some grounding in the philosophy, then you want to understand, well, why do you believe this? Or why do you think this? Why do you think we shouldn't do this? And why do you think we should push this? And we shouldn't allow this, and we should bring this in and stop devotees from doing this? And tell me, because I don't understand. And so then it can become a philosophical discussion, you know. But it's true, if you're immature, it could confuse you. And so then we could say, well, maybe in an immature stage, fanaticism is good. But I would only say temporarily. If you know, like for example, in Christianity, they don't get too philosophical, because if they do, there's a fear that people will lose faith, because they'll see the philosophy is not so logical. So it's based heavily on faith. You know, the story of Jesus is central to the whole thing. But if, like we just discussed, if you go into the philosophy, then it's different. You see inconsistencies, and they don't want you to question that. But in Krishna consciousness, it's the opposite, because the more you question, the more you see the truth, because everything can be answered. Yes? Yes? Raise your hand if you're awake. Yes?
But if everything can be answered, doesn't that mean that Krishna is like finite, that he has an end?
So that if everything can or cannot be answered.
If everything can be answered, then
Is Krishna finite? No, that's not logical. See, if everything can't be answered, then Krishna is unlimited.
because we say that Krishna is the absolute truth, so
Well, you may not be able to answer it, but there's an answer. But it's interesting, as we know, sometimes the acharyas, they have different points of view, but their different points of view may also be due to their different rasas. Or other factors may be there, which shows that Krishna consciousness is very big, and there's room. There's room for everyone, as long as we can support it with Guru and Sadhu and Shastra. And you probably know that Prabhupada would give different instructions to different devotees. So that's also why you get some differences there, different situations, different instructions. You know, we learned that Prabhupada stopped Harinam in India. Said, don't go out on the street. Which is seems very awkward. Because at that time people thought the devotees were beggars. They didn't know. Because beggars would chant Hare Krishna. The beggars would chant the Maha Mantra. So Prabhupada said, don't go out and chant. The Sankirtan movement is the Yuga Dharma, and your Guru is telling you don't go and chant on the street. But of course in America he's saying go and chant on the street. So, another contextual reality. Yes?
So, if all various acharyas have different moves or viewpoints, for example, perhaps based on their rasas, how do you know which acharya to follow?
Well, usually it's just two viewpoints, not many, many, many. How do you know? You follow yours. We have an issue in ISKCON because in Gaudiya Math, no one in Gaudiya Math says that the jiva was with Krishna and fell. And Prabhupada says he was. So now who do you listen to? We just heard yesterday, the devotee said, Prabhupada, Krishna knew if we came here we would suffer. Why did he let us come here? And Prabhupada said, you forced him. He didn't want you to go, you forced him. So that's, Prabhupada could have said, well, actually, he could have given some really esoteric answer, which would kind of make you think, did we come from Vaikuntha or did we not? Did we come from Brahman? Or he gave, and so many occasions he gave these direct answers. And then you can read in other books and hear other lectures, and no, we're marginal. We're not with Krishna. This and that. You can't fall from prema. So it's been discussed back and forth, and then some devotees have said, well, we have to understand that not everyone has said what Prabhupada had said, but definitely he did say it. So what are we to do? We can't deny that he said it. And for whatever reason, this is how he presented it. And so we can't say he didn't present it. So, like some people say, love of Krishna and your rasa is not within you. You get it from your guru. But that's not what Prabhupada said, so who do we believe? I mean, if you want to hear something very interesting, there's a Sanskrit department that would edit Prabhupada's Sanskrit, and then there was a Bengali department for the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And they could read all kinds of books, because they could read Sanskrit and Bengali that we couldn't read. So they were reading all kinds of books. And every one of those devotees was gone from the early days. Every one of them left. They were just reading things that didn't exactly line up with the things Prabhupada was saying, and they lost faith in Prabhupada. Not every one, there's only 3 of them. But they're not here. Isn't that interesting? And people criticize Bhaktisiddhanta. Even some disciples lost faith because he said or did things that didn't feel supported our Gaudiya Sampradaya or whatever, or previous acharyas. So who do you side with? Prabhupada, of course. Makes it easy, right? So we say, if you read other books, you have to understand them through Prabhupada's conclusions, and if you see something that doesn't exactly fit, then you just have to say, okay, that's not the way Prabhupada explained it. Or maybe I don't understand it, and I have to understand it in terms of what way Prabhupada explained. Let me try to understand it in terms of his explanation. And then we are told if there's a discussion amongst Vaishnavas and there's a disagreement, that we should not take sides. And that the disagreement just be considered inconceivable and transcendental. And there's room for both ideas within the spiritual world. But if you know that Prabhupada has made this point, then that's the point you go with. Right? Yes? Well, we have 5 minutes.
So where we are coming from now?
What? Where are we coming from? Where did we fall from? You're falling through the air, and you're about to land. And while you're falling through the air, you're thinking, where did I fall from? And someone says, it doesn't matter, because here you are now. Some people say it matters because we look philosophically naive if we don't understand it. Well, Prabhupada's answer was, just work on getting out, because it doesn't matter. Which is, you could say, well, that sounds like a cop-out answer. You didn't answer my question, but that's what Prabhupada said. And, my realization from studying it is, it's like, you jumped out the window of a big building. Does it matter if it was the 6th floor or the 12th floor? Because you're going down. Doesn't really matter. What matters is you did something stupid and you slipped. You slipped out the window. Whether it's the 6th floor or the 12th floor, you slipped and you did something stupid. And what was that stupid thing? You turned your back to Krishna. That we know. So wherever you slipped from, you turned your back. We turned our face to Maya. Whether it's the 6th floor or the 12th floor, we turned our face to Maya. That we know, and that's what the Shastra says. And that's the mistake we made, and we have to turn our face to Krishna. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we turned our face to Maya. It's time to turn back to Krishna. From whatever floor you fell from, you're all here now. So turn back. That's my conclusion, based on Prabhupada's statement that it doesn't matter. And it's just going to be one of those things. Go to Yamath, they're all going to say, we're cuckoo, to say that we were with Krishna. That's what they're going to say. Cuckoo. You understand cuckoo? Cuckoo means crazy. They'll say, you guys are crazy. But if you go and study the issue, that's what Prabhupada said. You can't say he didn't say it, he said it in different ways. And, that sometimes he said, no, you didn't. So, you find both things are there. But we turn our face towards Maya, which means we turned away from Krishna. And we have to turn back. That's just the way it is. And that turning to Maya means we're envious of Krishna. Whether we were seeing him or whether we just turned our back to him. At this point, it's not really that important.
I have some friends, they left ISKCON because of this issue.
Yeah.
And they tried to convince me, and I was really like, what is going on to hell? I didn't understand.
Maybe it's an issue which, it's hard to resolve. It's unfortunate. I mean, we should be so attached to Prabhupada and his mission that nothing would cause us to leave. And, I'm sure that many, many senior people in ISKCON, if they have a disciple or a follower who's just like, I can't understand this being with Krishna and falling and this and that, and I've studied it and this is my understanding that we weren't with Krishna. It's okay. It's not like the end of the world, And on that happy note, it's time to end class. I've been saved by the bell. I'm off the hot seat. I mean, you can't just ignore all those things Prabhupada said. You can look at all the things that other acharyas have said, but you can't ignore what Prabhupada said. But, I'm sure if you did a survey of every devotee in ISKCON, you would find a certain percentage that just will say we weren't with Krishna. We couldn't have been with Krishna. That's not our philosophy. Some will say that. A small percentage will say it. And some of those who say it are senior and learned. And nobody's going to kick them out because they think that way. It's just, it was awkward to preach that from the Vyasasana. From the asana, it's awkward to preach that in public. That will create a problem. And maybe the GBC will in the future discuss this more. Actually, I could even try to suggest that. Because they did discuss it previously, but I think it needs more discussion. And that would be good. And they could acknowledge that other acharyas said it differently, and this is what Prabhupada said. And that's that. So, if you have any further questions, then you can ask after class. Yes. After class. Or you want to film it. After 7, questions are 1,000 rupees. When you ask personally. Okay. We have my book in Russian for all the Russians if they want. We have the Japa books. And we have some CDs. And we have what? Books back there? Female Diksha Guru. 1? 2. Okay, girls, go fight for those 2 last books. Because someday you may have to become a guru. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, yeah, if you want to go on, if you meet in front of Panchatattva,